Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Grog. Hold on to your hats, because today's Tesla news episode is set to be the wildest, most shockingly huge one of the year so far, like a gigawatt of jaw-dropping updates.
First up, we have a huge deal announced between Tesla and Samsung. Samsung is now in line to produce AI chips for Tesla in a $16.5 billion deal, but as Elon said, it will likely be a lot higher than that. This deal will run through the end of 2033, and the plan is for Samsung's upcoming plant in Taylor, Texas, to produce Tesla's next-gen AI 6 chip. This is actually a very interesting story and maybe even a bigger deal for Samsung because Samsung has had problems bringing in enough orders in the US to utilize its new foundry capacity. Because of that, it had already postponed completion of the construction and the operational ramp up of the Taylor fab to 2026. An analyst said their foundry business has been loss-making and struggling with underutilization, so this will help a lot. Tesla's business may also help them to attract other customers. Now, I know most of you aren't that excited about Samsung here, but I'm sharing that because this likely means Tesla secured excellent terms for this deal. That's because Tesla was most likely in a place where they had a lot of leverage given how Samsung was struggling to find customers for this new fab, which is likely part of the reason Tesla ended up with a benefit like this. Elon said Samsung agreed to allow Tesla to assist in maximizing manufacturing efficiency. This is a critical point as I will walk the line personally to accelerate the pace of progress. And the fab is conveniently located not far from my house. And we know that Elon being hands-on like this is going to push the project much faster than it would go otherwise. Elon also said Samsung's giant new Texas fab will be dedicated to making Tesla's next-gen AI 6 chip. The strategic importance of this is hard to overstate. Samsung currently makes Tesla's AI 4. TSMC is going to make AI 5, which just finished design, initially in Taiwan and then in Arizona. Now, before I proceed with this news, let me be clear. AI 5 is not going to make it to Tesla vehicles until sometime toward the end of 2026. What this means is AI 6 is not likely to see a Tesla vehicle until maybe 2028 at the earliest. And remember, AI 5 was supposed to enter production toward the end of this year based on Elon's prediction in July of 2024. So, given the updated timeline of everything after Tesla's Q2 call, Elon and Tesla are now about 1 year late relative to Elon's projections for AI 5. So my point, this news isn't really going to do anything for Tesla over the next 2 years, but after that, the implications of this, as Elon would say, cannot be overstated. This Samsung factory in Taylor, Texas is roughly 30 minutes away from Giga Texas. Samsung's initial investment in this project was going to be $17 billion for a 4 million square foot facility, but that's now been expanded to over $40 billion total. And the campus size will be as large as 7 million square feet. This fab is designed for more advanced semiconductor manufacturing, specifically the 2 and 3 nanometer process nodes for more high-performant chips. And yes, previously I said nanometer, but I heard James Douma say nanometer, so I'm gonna switch over and go with that. Construction of this Samsung factory started in 2022, and initially they were looking at production in late 2024, but as we talked about, that's now been pushed back to late 2026. In case you were wondering why would Samsung start building this fab if they didn't have any customers? It's a good question, but the primary answer is the CHIPS Act funding. Samsung knew it wanted to expand its production base to the United States. There were incentives available at the federal level and some at the state level, and they made a move. Some people are saying this Samsung fab will only make chips for Tesla, and that's likely because of what Elon said, how it'll be dedicated to making Tesla's AI 6. But for whatever it's worth, there are reports out there saying that Samsung is still looking for some other customers for this facility. But for now, its focus will absolutely be on Tesla, and even if Samsung makes chips for a few other companies other than Tesla, Tesla is going to be the biggest customer and it won't be that close. Also, to avoid confusion, everybody needs to know that Samsung does have another fab in Austin. Separately, that one has been up and running since 1999 1897, but it's using more mature nodes. Think 11 nanometer and up. If you're new to the channel, just know the lower the nanometer now, the more advanced and efficient the chip is. So just know Samsung does have a fab in Austin, but that one is separate from this new location that's in Taylor, Texas, and it's the one in Taylor that's going to be making AI6 on these much more advanced and efficient nodes. It's certainly tempting to try to figure out how many chips $16.5 billion might get for Tesla, but I think that's a fool's errand at this point. And my reasoning is that at this point, we don't know anything about AI6. Is it going to be a single die design, or is it going to be built with a multi-die architecture, kind of like Tesla uses for Dojo now? Of course, some people are already trying to run those calculations, but oftentimes they're not clarifying if they're talking about the wafer cost or the die cost. And a simple analogy I heard years ago that helped me remember the difference: just think of a wafer as the uncooked dough if you're making a pizza. So you have this round, usually disc-like shape, which you can call the wafer. And then once that wafer has the actual ingredients of the pizza on it, which in this case would be the circuits, then it's typically cut into squares or rectangles, and those individual pieces would be called the dies. Honestly, today's news is exactly why I called out what Elon said on the Q2 call that most people weren't talking about. Elon said, thinking about Dojo 3 and AI6, it seems like intuitively we want to try to find convergence there, where it's basically the same chip. And the way Tesla would use it, maybe 2 of them in a car or on an Optimus, and then maybe a bigger number on a board, maybe 5 to 12 on a board, something like that if you want high bandwidth communication. So again, this would basically be Tesla designing this super versatile chip architecture that can handle compute both on the inference side and on the neural net training side. So for inference in the cars or on Optimus, again, maybe 1 or 2 chips, but then on the training side, Tesla can take that exact same chip and package it up in such a way where maybe you have 10 to 12 on a board in this bigger structure, and then Tesla connects a bunch of those together to actually train the neural networks. This would give Tesla a modular design in a sense and give them different configurable modes. One uses less power for inference compute, and the other setup, adding many of these together, is for more higher throughput activities like training. And the more you think about it, the more efficiency gains this would lead to for Tesla, but also it's just more bulk manufacturing at lower prices. And then Tesla only has 1 chip that it has to reduce any software bugs for instead of 2, which previously would have been the inference chip and then separately Dojo. And the obvious benefits like this from a supply chain standpoint for Tesla, having this production so close to Giga Austin in America, which will also reduce Tesla's reliance on Nvidia and having to pay those 70% plus margins. And who knows, in an uber bullish scenario, if things go well and this AI6 chip can actually compete with what Nvidia has at that time, then as we've been talking about, XAI buying AI6 or Dojo or whatever they call this converged chip becomes that much more likely. And then for all of the long-term Tesla investors out there, this gets even more interesting if you go back and recall what Elon said at the beginning of 2024. Elon said, I think there's also some potential here for an Amazon Web Services element down the road, where if we've got very powerful inference because we have hardware 3 in the cars, and eventually AI4 and AI5, then there's a potential to run, when the car is not moving, to actually run distributed inference. So kind of like AWS, but distributed inference. Like, it takes a lot of computers to train an AI model, but many orders of magnitude less compute to run it. So if you can imagine the future, perhaps where there's a fleet of 100 million Teslas, and on average, they've got maybe a kilowatt of inference compute, that's 100 gigawatts of inference compute distributed all around the world. And even in an autonomous future where the car is utilized a lot more, that still leaves over 100 hours a week where the car inference computer could be doing doing something else. And it seems like it'll be a waste not to use it. Now, clearly, something like this would be a 5 to 10 year play. It's going to take Tesla a while to scale up the number of robotaxis in its fleet that have either AI 5 or AI 6 chips in it. So for me, for now, I would definitely not be considering this part of my core thesis for investing in Tesla over the next 10 years. However, I would absolutely call it an attractive call option that gets more attractive with each passing month. Tetsuo said AI6 unifies hardware for vehicles, robots, and data centers building on Dojo's chip design. Elon replied to that saying the $16.5 billion number is just the bare minimum. Actual output is likely to be several times higher. And look, several times, if you call that 3 times, that would be close to $50 billion. And if you do that math, taking $50 billion divided by the roughly 8-year term that this contract will run through for Tesla and Samsung, remember it's through 2033, and let's say it just starts in 2026, that would be over $6 billion Tesla would be spending per year over those 8 years, if the actual output in this case was about 3 times higher. And to drive the point home, replying to Sawyer, Elon said likely much more than that $16.5 billion number. Jesse Pelton shared this saying, most important news of the year so far, to which Elon said, so few understand this, it'll become obvious in 2 to 3 years. Phil Beisel, who's been doing a great series on Tesla's compute and AI endeavors, I'll have his account linked below, said AI 6 for the data center for training and inference, AI 6 for robotaxi and FSD inference, AI 6 for Optimus inference. AI 6 will likely be produced in 2 configurations, a system-on-wafer variant for Dojo, and a single die version for inference at the edge, powering FSD and Optimus. And to further broaden the scope of possibilities here over the next decade, Brett from ARC said every moving machine will require an inference chip, and the capability of that machine will be governed by the integrated capability of that chip. And yes, Elon responded with the bullseye emoji. So if nothing else for now, this is what I would call a strong signal of where Tesla is headed and what it believes is the most important part of its future. And sure, robotaxis and Optimus, because they're consumer-facing products, may be a little bit more exciting, but we cannot forget it's all of this compute and the inference that's actually going to enable these products. And that's why all last week I started really emphasizing the need to be up to date with compute and training and inference. And so for us here in the Electrified community, this news comes at a serendipitous time. Tesla just never stops. AI 5 isn't even in manufacturing yet and won't be out for another year. And yet here Tesla is signing a massive deal with Samsung for AI 6. And Dojo, if Tesla can pull off this convergence Elon is speaking of. If you have hardware 3, this changes nothing. Your job is still to sit tight and wait for Tesla to solve unsupervised with AI 4, and then Tesla will make public its plans to accommodate hardware 3 owners. And I repeat, AI 6 isn't going to be something to concern yourself with as a Tesla car owner until sometime in 2028 at the earliest. But as a long-term Tesla stock owner, this is the type of news that should get you excited about where Tesla is headed. Since we're on the ever-important topic of semiconductors and compute infrastructure, I'm guessing a lot of you don't know there's another industry where chips and data is heavily relied on, and it's not nearly as exciting as what Tesla is building. It's the data broker industry that at least a few of you are still underestimating. Now, almost all these data brokers use semiconductors in their servers, processors, and storage, and then several bigger players have their own data centers that they own and operate. If you haven't taken any action yet, there's a very high chance your family's personal information is being sold around the web right now, meaning bad actors have a good chance of accessing it and doing any number of nefarious things with it. And the worst part about this situation, let's say you call one of the data brokers, wait on hold a while, then request they remove your info. You're still going to have to check back to make sure they actually removed it. And even if they do, you'll still have to make hundreds, if not thousands, of other calls, and you'll have to do that continuously because new data brokers constantly pop up. AKA, if you want to spend most of your life doing that, be my guest, I suppose. But Delete Me is the option to avoid avoid all of that, as they will do all of that legwork for you. Every quarter, you get a detailed report with their work, how much time it saved you, how many listings were reviewed, removed, and how many pieces of your personal info were found. It's an American company, it is all that they do, and you'll get a dedicated rep you can talk to anytime you have questions or concerns. The service is incredibly affordable, so if you want peace of mind for you and your family and that privacy back, you can head to joindeleteme.com/electrified to get 20% off using my code electrified linked below, or by using the QR code on the screen. Marco, our Tesla charging detective, has reported Pepsi's building a new semi-charging station at one of their facilities in Denver, Colorado. Permits were submitted earlier this month for the addition of 6 semi-chargers at the company's Pico Street Distribution Center. I'll also have this site linked below, which shows all of the Tesla semi-charging locations and their current status. For example, if you click on this new one that we just read about in Colorado, you can see the name, PepsiCo Denver, the stall count, and the current status. This one is in permitting. Zooming out, as of now, across the United States, there are 11 different sites with a Tesla semi-charger in various stages of the project development timeline. The only one right now on the East Coast is in Charlotte for Frito-Lay with an 18 stall count that's currently permitting. Most of the rest are in California or Nevada, and we have the one in Denver, Colorado, and the others in San Antonio and Dallas. And yes, Tesla's going to be quite involved with these installations. Don't forget about these job postings. Business development, commercial charging. You'll lead the sale of Tesla's level 3 charging products, including supercharger and semi-charging, to major partners like Fortune 500 companies, charge point operators, and real estate owners. But especially early on in this pilot program for the Tesla Semi and on the charging side, Tesla is going to be helping these companies get everything up and running as efficiently as possible, which makes a ton of sense because Tesla has all of the expertise and experience on how to do this, and some of these other companies that are newly trying to electrify their operations do not. And here's another massive blue ocean for Tesla to lead the charge, pun intended, building out a semi-charging network across the country. As far as my eyes can see, there's still nobody that does charging better than Tesla. Both Lars and Elon spoke over the weekend at the X Takeover event, so here are a few of the highlights from the conversation with Lars.
A lot of the other cars, even the S and X, now have the front-facing camera. So can owners expect maybe a future update with one?
The autopilot system doesn't actually use it. It uses inference to know what was in front of the car before it pulls up. The first one we put it on was a Cybertruck, and that was like for off-roading. I think Wes made us do that. And then we just kind of proliferated it, and guess I can't say for certain it will come in Model 3 at some point, but like it followed the trend line, you know. It's heading that way. A couple of the like little things that we did in there that people don't notice and maybe don't write about, but were really sort of difficult was, you know, in the second row, we moved the seat belt from the wheelhouse area to the C-pillar, which is like right on the door. You fold the seat down or you move the seat forward, you get into the third row, the seatbelt would fall behind the second row seat. And then you can't reach it, can't get it. And so we moved it to the C-pillar so it stays like nice and neatly tucked away there so you can always grab it. And that sounds super easy. Just move the seatbelt. But the seatbelt takes so much load and so much crash. And we put it in this little tiny section, like in between the quarter glass and the door, where the seal also had to be. And it was like a lot of painstaking work to like figure out how to carry the load through there without totally changing the body. I remember poking at the team over and over. I'm like, nope, it's got to be there. We got to move it. We got to move it. And finally, you know, the engineers figured out how to do it. And you know, I don't have a new Model Y yet in my family, but when I drive them, I think about it every day, and I'm like, this is gonna make people's lives so much better. You know, the amount of work that goes into just that little bit of movement that can make someone's life better is super cool.
Do you see a need for a smaller or more globally a scalable version to serve broader and more urban or international segments of the pickup market?
I mean, you know, we always talked about making a smaller pickup. You know, I think in the future, you know, as more and more the robotaxi comes into the world, like we look at those options and we think about, okay, what, you know, that kind of service is useful not just for people but also for goods. And so we've definitely been churning in the design studio about what we might do to serve that need for sure.
What is going on with the Roadster?
Oh man, everyone's favorite question. So no, Roadster is definitely in development. We did talk about it last Sunday night. It's a super cool product. We are gearing up for super cool demos. It's gonna be mind blowing, I think, as Elon says. We spent a lot of time last few years like rethinking what we did and why we did it and what would make it an awesome and exciting, say like last best driver's car, I guess. Given where our Tesla is going with autonomy and stuff, we know that I don't want to say it's a swan song, but like if we're gonna make this transition to autonomy, like driving cars turn into like a luxury, and so the Roadster's got to be the best, right? And we've been making it better and better and better, and now, as you know, it's even a little bit more than a car. Yeah, we showed Elon some cool demos last week of the tech we've been working on, and he got a little excited.
I need to stop here because I think if you internalize what Lars just said, it should be the nail in the coffin of the company that Tesla used to be, the one that focused on making the best electric cars in the world. Tesla will always make cars going forward, but after the Roadster, it sounds like the focus really is going to be autonomy first and foremost. Maybe a smaller pickup could have more of a driver focus, but even then, Lars talked about that hypothetical in the framework of autonomy. Cybercab is autonomy first, and it'll be the same with the Robovan. So the Roadster is likely to be Tesla's last vehicle with the primary focus on the driving experience. Of course, the more affordable models will be cars with wheels and pedals, but the Roadster might be the last new design with driving as the focus. So if you're somebody like me who does still love to drive sometimes, this can be a sad thought. But the main takeaway should be how incredible the Roadster is likely to be, and Elon did say that demo will be later this year or now early next year at the latest. But I just think many in the Tesla community still need to come to grips with the fact that Tesla's days of making cars with wheels and pedals focused on the driving experience may actually come to an end with the Roadster. Speaking of that, Lars did confirm if you ever see a Cybercab with a wheel out and about in Giga Texas, it's only for testing the vehicle. But here's Lars on what really makes Tesla special.
And I think that that's like a super strength at Tesla, because we don't have silos of like groups that like only work on Model Y, or only work on Optimus, or only work on energy, or only work, we all are the same set of engineers. And so I think, I was joking, I'm like, I don't even know what like maybe at some point I was only in charge of vehicle engineering, but I don't know when that ship sailed a long time ago. And it's been awesome and inspiring to like be a leader for all these engineers and technicians and people that work with me, and like I get to represent them in situations like this. And I think it's undersold how powerful that group of engineers is, compared to what the rest of the industry might be able to muster. And I was talking to Sandy backstage, and he's at just various projects, and like when you realize how broad you can go because of what you're working on, it's like, wow, yeah, that's super powerful. Well, one of the superpowers we have at Tesla is like our automation groups and our manufacturing engineering departments. They're just like, I think about the 6,000 people that work for me, about 2,000 of them are in automation and machine building. About 1,800 are in manufacturing engineering, and about 1,800 are in design engineering. And then you got support and technicians and things like that. So it's like really a third. And when I think about that, it's like why is that so important? Well, when you invent something new and no one's ever made it before, it's much easier to have the team that's going to build the machine on your team, so you don't have to work through these layers of like even stupid things like I need a quote from a vendor to supply the machine, and like that takes 2 weeks, and then they got to check with their suppliers, and that takes another 2 weeks, and you end up with this stack of like timelines that like really 2/3 of it is just back and forth between different companies and different levels. And in the end, you're translating that same goal of whatever it is you're trying to make through that same bureaucracy of tiers of companies. And so at Tesla, it's like, hey, I want to make this thing. I don't know how to. And you're like, okay, let me call the guy or the girl who is like most closely made a machine that's built this before. You call them into the room, and they come in the room, and they're like, well, I could do it making, like the panels on, well, not that one, but on the cyber cabs, when we were doing that idea of like, how do we make these panels that are paint, look like paint, but aren't paint, and like are super easy to replace and durable. And so we brought like, a design engineer, and we had Franz's color team in there, and then we had the plastics team in there that builds the plastics machines. And then we're like, you know what though? We need to change the materials. So brought the materials teams in, and Amir's here somewhere, he's a big part of that. And like, you can't do that in many companies. It just doesn't exist to the level of expertise we have. And so that might be a 2-hour meeting, and you come out with an actual idea of how to make something real. And then you go do it. And so that speed is just like all throughout that process. That just takes away months and months of iteration. And I like building Optimus and building, this is the same thing. It's like we had to invent new automation equipment with the level of precision that most people don't use, maybe except in like the chip industry. But we're talking about like chips are this small and they don't weigh that much. And we're talking about doing on a 65 kilogram humanoid robot. I mean, the same level of precision. So we had to go all the way back to the our machine builders in Germany and say, we're going to build a new frame. And the precision is going to be like micron level. And it's going to move super fast because we got to build, thousands of these things a week. And then we were like, reinvented the machine so that it has more precision and it moves faster. And like, I don't think those companies you were talking about in China are doing that are building robots. And that's what, I get super excited about that. I wish more people got excited about it. Like, it's the coolest part of working at Tesla.
And finally, Lars said he's most excited about the Tesla Semi and how that is going to be a no-brainer from a cost per mile perspective. I'll have the full interview linked below. Elon also gave an interview at the X Takeover, but he only talked about Tesla for about 10 to 15 minutes, and some of the questions he couldn't really answer, and the ones that he did, I think it's really stuff that we've all heard before from him. In my opinion, the only thing I'd classify as new, when Elon was asked about where Optimus will have the biggest impact, not only did he say in situations where it's dangerous work, but this time he added Optimus acting in a nurse role or providing medical care to somebody that needs physical help. And he did say that Optimus will be even more transformative than FSD. But I'll have the full thing linked below. I'm sure many of you have seen this clip already, but for the few that have not, I need you to watch this clip from Chris at Dirty Tesla. It was FSD the whole time.
Hello?
Done for the day?
Yeah.
What's your zip code?
It's still FSD.
Stick that right on your windshield. Have a good one.
Great, thank you. What the heck? What the heck was that? How did it do that? That was 100%. I didn't touch anything.
That's crazy.
Okay, well, I'll take it.
Wow.
Frankly, I'm not sure what was better, the way FSD handled that toll booth-like scenario or Chris and Stephanie's reaction. But how about this? Ashok said it can see the transaction happening using the repeater and pillar cameras. Hence, FSD proceeds on its own when the transaction is complete. So if that's not a sign of a truly smart vehicle, I am not sure what is. We were expecting some robotaxi invites over the weekend for the Bay Area, but it was somewhat odd. This is really all we got, a screenshot from the app that said if your ride's taking place in California, it's being conducted with a safety driver using supervised FSD pursuant to rules from the CPUC. So yes, that means Business Insider was correct, and they put out a positive article about Tesla. So maybe take a look out your window, there may be a pig or two out there flying around. And guys, this is the screenshot that's been floating around over the weekend for the geofence in the Bay Area. Now, I wouldn't say it's official yet, but I will say I have seen some reputable people share this screenshot that would confirm it is actually from the app. And doing some simple calculations, the drive from San Jose to Oakland is about 1 hour and 15 minutes or about 40 miles. Meaning from north to south, we could call this geofence roughly 50 miles. And then from just east of Fremont to just west of the 280, which runs north and south, you could call that 20 miles. So that would be a geofence of roughly 1,000 square miles on the conservative side. But honestly, with my measurements, if I wasn't trying to be ultra conservative, this could be as big as up to 3,000 square miles. For comparison, right now, Tesla's geofence in Austin is 42 square miles. But again, maybe subtract 50% of whatever the actual number is because of the water in the middle. But this would certainly be an awesome start for the robotaxi network in the Bay Area, even though for now there will be somebody in the driver's seat. As we said though, that's just a regulatory limitation for Tesla, and Tesla did tell the CPUC that it plans to offer rides to friends and family of employees and select members of the public under the permit Tesla has we spoke about last week. They're still saying Tesla has not applied for additional permits that would be needed to collect fares or test without a safety driver, and the next step would be to apply for a CPUC license for an autonomous vehicle to pick up passengers with a safety driver. But companies must first operate a pilot phase where they cannot charge customers. But remember, Tesla's been operating a pilot phase here dating back to 2024. The real question would be, if this reporting is accurate, why has Tesla not yet applied for those additional permits? My guess would be risk mitigation. Tesla has an entire operations side that it's working out bugs for and making improvements with for this service as they build out the app and locations and everything that's available. And Tesla likely has a good idea of how long the next permit will take to obtain. Tesla's starting to feel confident about Austin, and so they'll apply for that permit in the Bay Area when it makes sense to go to the next level. But as it stands now, Tesla can already collect all of the data it needs with somebody in the driver's seat, so they don't have to wait for another permit to do that. ARK Invest sent out an email talking about Tesla and Waymo and the race toward autonomy. Our research shows a robotaxi fleet of around 300,000 vehicles would be optimal in Austin to serve all urban vehicle miles traveled. Now, if you're thinking, wait a second, I thought a fleet of 1,500 to 3,000 robotaxis in Austin would be enough. Well, it would be enough for the current ride-hail market, but this would be for all miles traveled, so clearly this is a very long-term thing. But it highlights Tesla's advantage. It would only take them 2 or 3 months to manufacture those 300,000 vehicles, whereas Waymo's only expected to have 3,500 total by the end of next year. I still feel like things like this should be obvious for anybody that tunes in to Electrified regularly, but as a reminder, Tesla's path to scaling to 300,000 robotaxis in Austin is easy and known, whereas for Waymo, it's an entirely different story. Yet another battery storage system in Australia is up and running. This one is the Kurangi BESS. It's not a huge project, it'll be incorporating 100 Tesla Megapacks, but this project addresses some grid constraints using Megapacks with Tesla's grid-forming inverters, which maintain grid voltage and frequency services traditionally provided by conventional generators. The company said this tech plays a pivotal role in stabilizing the network and unlocking the region's full renewable energy potential. It's a powerful example of how advanced grid-forming inverter and battery storage tech can combine to solve some of the most complex challenges in Australia's energy transition. And another cool story for my Vegas and casino fans, another battery storage project using Megapacks is now online in Nevada. The first phase of this project, called Escape, began supplying power to Caesars and the Wynn under long-term PPAs in June. And the second phase will begin supplying MGM later this year. Tesla is supplying and installing the battery storage systems. So next time you catch a buzz in Vegas, you can tell everybody that Tesla is playing a big role in supplying power to some of these casinos. There's another storyline to watch in the Australian energy market on the residential side. More residential energy storage systems were registered nationally in one day than rooftop solar. But the real news is why. The milestone comes just over 2 weeks after the launch of the federal government's Cheaper Home Batteries rebate, which cuts the costs of installing solar solar storage by up to around 30%. In the first 17 days of this rebate program, there were over 7,000 battery systems registered, and that rate is ramping up quickly. So for this, Tesla's Powerball is set up beautifully. Over the weekend, there was some ridiculous protests taking place outside of the Tesla diner, but the good news, as of now, the Tesla diner is protest-free. They've come and gone. On YouTube, Asia Love and her friend reviewed the Tesla diner, and they talked to somebody that worked there that confirmed the diner is indeed an all-electric facility. No gas is used anywhere on site, not even in the kitchen. And guys, the time may finally be coming. If you've been waiting for the Grok update, it is now starting to go a bit wider. Not to everybody just yet, but I've seen many screenshots of a lot more people getting it as of this afternoon. Many of you know I'm a sucker for this supercharging blueprint with the solar canopies and the new construction. This one is in France, 56 stalls, just open, so wanted to pass that along. For me, this site is truly a thing of beauty. The US and the EU have come to terms on a trade deal where the Trump administration will impose a blanket tariff of 15% on most EU goods, which represents a significant reduction from Trump's original threat of 30%, and the new 15% rate will almost halve the existing tariff rate on Europe's auto sector, which was 27.5%. Early reaction from the analysts, they're estimating that Porsche, Mercedes, BMW, and VW in that order are the most significant beneficiaries of this trade deal, with a greater share of imports from Europe into the US. And just in case you've seen it, some people were saying this trade deal has big implications for autonomous regulations easing across the EU, but as far as I can tell, that is not true. Those were part of the negotiation, but that did not make it into this final deal. But it is ironic that the UNECE just posted how road crashes kill 1.19 million people every year and injure millions more. They said the UN vehicle safety standards developed at the UNECE are among the proven tools that governments can use to save lives. Well, guess what? When you really think about it, in actuality, this is a tool that is possibly taking lives because they're not allowing Tesla's FSD on the roads, which the data has proven is materially safer than a driver without it. So they really need to get it together yesterday. The Boring Company will be building a tunnel loop in Nashville, Tennessee at no cost to the taxpayers, where people will be able to ride in Tesla vehicles. Tesla stock closed the day at $325.59, up 3.02%, while the NDX was up 0.36%. The volume was 11% higher than the average. Don't forget, check out Delete Me linked below for those interested in sticking it to all of these data brokers that are profiting from your personal information. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.